privilege to have today, and I think it's really, at least for the students in my class, appropriate that we have Dr. Kevin Washington presenting. As you can see, that's the title of his lecture. But remember we were talking earlier in the semester, we were talking about interdisciplinary studies, multidisciplinary studies, and one of the examples I pointed out was psychology, and then the last couple of weeks ago I related to that experience I had with some people. We have an African-American psychologist whose focus is on African-American psychology. This is the point where I usually make a joke and say, well, black people don't have psychology. But the reality of African-American culture and the application of psychology is that it is interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. What would you say, John? It involves a wide range of thought and disciplines. Just can't walk into your doctor's office and say, I got a problem. You got to have your doctor know something about who you are, what is your historical experience, where you come from, what it's like to live in your world. And it takes more than just a pill and a change in behavior. So with no further ado, Dr. Kevin Washington.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
I apologize for the delay, but we'll see how this thing works out. As we talk about psychology and the historical significance of psychology, it's very important to know that anytime you go see a psychologist, the fundamental question becomes telling your family history. So there's no way that you can even have a discussion about who you are without knowing who you've been. And so this discussion then is not only about understanding African-American psychology, but it's understanding the historical significance of African reality. And so without even having a discussion about the African notion of beingness, you wouldn't even have a psychology. So how about that? And without understanding that people have been trying to understand human functioning for thousands of years. And so that takes us back into the ancient civilizations of Kemet, or some call Egypt. That understanding what it means to function as a human has ancient roots into an African concept of what it means to be human. So today we're going to talk about that African notion of beingness, how it informs this idea of Black History Month, and then how it can impact us in the future for perpetuity. So that's the issue. So it is, what is it, what has it been, and where is it trying to go? So in this particular month, we talk about Black History Month. We talk about a month that has been devoted to acknowledging the historical significance of a people that have been ostracized, that have been dehumanized, that have been somehow ridiculed, that have been pushed to the side, marginalized, and yet there is this call to acknowledge that they have a significant history. The process of making one marginal is one of taking of their essence. The issue of dehumanizing, it was the papal, it was the Roman Catholic Church at some level that acknowledged the fact that these Africans could be put into enslavement because they were not human, they had no souls. So the idea of taking essence away from folks, as a matter of fact, one of the things that folks did in this country, that they started creating soul food, S-O-U-L, to put soul back, the people that try to take soul out of. Even the word okra comes from an ancient Ghanaian term. Okra means soul. So it is always this process of trying to find essence and put essence back so that one can be human all over again. So this at some level is about Black History Month, about putting back essence into those who have had it extracted from them. Extracted because there's been this system set up of one of superiority and inferiority. The issue is not so much what somebody says about you, the issue is what you believe about yourself after they say it. The question is that there's been a lie that has been told and it's perpetuated, people begin to believe it to be true. And we know it's so because they go around talking about all day long, nigga, 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 nigga. If there had never been enslavement, would niggas even exist? Question. If there had never been a moment of enslavement, would a nigga exist? And the answer is what? No. The process of dehumanization comes in through the defamation of character. So if I can take your essence from you and begin to allow you to believe yourself to be lower than human, then everything about you becomes inhumane. It's a process. Set the stage for the discussion. So then you move from nigga to calling your brother a dog. Look at the process of psychological defamation of character. that if I call my brother a dog, D-A-W-G, by default his mother has to be a what? Look at the connection of dehumanization, psychological disruption of one's essence. So we have then this process of Black history saying, get infused back with who you really are and stop believing who they say that you are. And if once you understand that, then you change everything that happens around you in the world. And what you have to also understand, Woodson suggests to us, is that this is not a new thing. This has been here around for a long time. So we know about W.B. Du Bois of the souls of Black folk. And so what I thought about some years ago is on the soles, S-O-L-E-S, the feet of Black folks, have we had social change that has impacted the world on the souls of Black folk. And this idea I'm going to use, not only is it a modern term in the Zulu sense, Ubuntu, but as it has been practiced, it is ancient. So this title is Ubuntu on the souls of Black folk. And so we will talk about a little bit about understanding African thought and understanding how African worldview functions. In order to understand anything about a people, you must understand their cosmology, nutology, axiology, and epistemology. You must understand how they organize the universe, the cosmos. You must understand their values, their value system, their ontology, how they understand creation, and their epistemology, how they acquire knowledge. And if you don't understand it, you don't understand a people. It is just simply a different way of functioning. A classic example, just to get you to understand some of these concepts. There is a studio called the Arthur Murray Studio, where they put down these particular feet, and you learn to do the steps on these feet, and you count 1, 2, 3. And that now all of a sudden you're doing the walls. Tell me this, when you see the video, teach me how to Dougie, is that how you learn to do the Dougie? Yes or no? It's not a 1, 2. Nature of knowledge is not about counting, it's about what? Teach me how to Dougie. And then there's the movement, true or false? Come on now. You scared? Say you're scared, all right? This is your time, your space, and let's have a conversation. So the idea then about understanding how knowledge is acquired is not through counting, but through rhythm and modality. Different expression. How do you explain, for example, the idea of shooting a free throw? There's a technique to shooting a free throw. But whoever said that shooting a free throw included your tongue hanging out? It is a modality, rhythm, and expression that says that I can do it a little bit better. I can do it differently. And so counting, basketball, when basketball season, might as well talk about it. I see Miami Heat in the place. Counting, when Naismith created basketball, it was simply a pass game, dribble pass. At one point in this country, the most preeminent basketball players were Jewish because of what happened historically to them. Then we end up with the African American influence. After that happens, it's a whole lot of dribbling. This becomes rhythm and expression. Had nothing to do with basketball initially. There was no slam dunk. There was none of, all of that didn't exist until the expressive modalities of a people came in, the SOUL, and transformed the game. So now the All-Star game will be held, and you have to have a slam dunk contest. It is the genius of a people that can transform a reality and make it something better than it was before. But if you don't know that it's your stuff, then you believe that it came from some other place, and you trip them with it, and not understand that it is really your genius that's making the world actually function the way it is. Is that making sense? Yeah. I get hyped. Okay, so I love talking about myself, talking about my people, talking about us. Because we have not been talking about, that's what Black History Month is about. Understanding that this idea not only of worldview, but how does it manifest? Some suggest that it manifests through what's called an optimal worldview and a suboptimal. This is according to Dr. Leonard James Meyer. Suboptimal worldview deals with control and mastery over nature, survival of the fittest, economy, those kind of things, individualism. The optimal worldview, she says, deals with oneness of harmony with nature, survival of the group, and so forth and so on. Critical to the discussion, even this morning, was how are we getting our paper done? Right here, whatever it was, you say that we are not cheating. The idea of collectivity. The issue is, are we cheating? No, we are not cheating. The issue, the notion of we are communal and we're working through this thing together. Even suggested to us that we sometimes have the same Brain, you said that. I'm listening to you. I get hustle very well. Okay? So this idea then that the communal system in the play, full play, is more important than I got to get mine. They say that we are going to get through this thing together because we're in this together. So when you succeed, I succeed. And so that is the idea of worldview made manifest. I want to make sure that I get the key concepts because I get so carried away sometimes that I don't tell you the key thing I want you to get. And the key thing I want you to get out of this experience today is this notion of Ubuntu. Say Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a Zulu term which speaks to this idea of whatever you do in your space impacts me in my space. Whatever happens to me, good, bad, or different, will affect you. Everything is interconnected. My children, I get up at a certain time, dropping them off, getting here at a certain time, get to the space at a certain time, having to get a tag at a certain time, to go to the car at a certain time, to get back at a certain time, to start at a certain time. Everything was linked. Everything in my life was tied to you and vice versa. Everything was impacted by this event started at this time, and when it will end, impacts the next thing that will happen. Ubuntu, the Zulu says, everything is connected. And everything is connected, therefore I must treat it with respect, because everything is connected. It's not disconnected. I just can't do what I do and think it's all good. Okay, Ubuntu. You've seen the movie Avatar. Ubuntu concept, same thing. Idea, everything is. You do know that that's an African story tied with a Native American story. You do get that, right? Yes. Yeah, I thought it was Native American. It's a combination of two that has anyway. So now you know. All right. So. Ubuntu refers to this idea of being, Ubu, into universal unifying force. That being is all tied and connected, but we have a choice to respect that connectivity. So this idea I want to talk to you then about is Ubuntu on the souls of black folk. We have this idea here of the souls of black folk who are marching. I want you to gain a critical point here. That the people here are not marching for themselves individually. They're marching on it in a collective for a collective reason. It is for the restoration of the notion of humanity. They're saying simply that as a result of something of inhumane treatment, there has been a rupture and that we must come together to restore humanity. And it wasn't simply about them marching for their particular community, their people, their folks, their family, but they were marching at some level to correct some wrongs that were in this place called America. So they were about the restoration of humanity. It wasn't simply about, I'm going to get mine, because if any one of them wanted to get theirs, what would happen if one person marched? They could get picked off. But the issue of Ubuntu says that we are all tied together. And so it is not simply about understanding what I have to do, but it says we protest injustice. It is about equality now. It's about us. And in respecting us, you also benefit from the process. So this is the souls of black folk in this country set into motion all of the social change, most of the major social change that you see. Gay and lesbian right movement, walking, marching. Africana studies, African American studies in school system, march, the same thing. Beginning to acknowledge the treatment of those with physical disabilities, marching. That said that if you understand my humanity, it will transpire other folks to be respected as being human. The first Africana Studies program in this country started at San Francisco State University, which I am on leave from in California. And when the students marched there, it began to set into motion Africana Studies programs all over the country, which then set into motion Asian American Studies, which then went into La Raza Studies, which then set up a whole ethnic studies department where there's an acknowledgement of this idea that every single group in this country has played a pivotal role in being. But it was on the souls, S-O-L-E-S, of black folks that these things began to move forward. It's not about bragging, it's simply about acknowledgement. That's all it is. All I'm saying is that, can I get a little piece of this? That's it. It's about acknowledging that the fact that when you have this idea of Ubuntu, whatever you do will impact and affect the entire world, and it does. Good, bad, or indifferent. Dr. Woodson, who was credited with being the father of Black History Month, who started Negro History Week, which he was set into motion this idea that if black folks, or the Negro, as he said at that time, could have a moment where they're acknowledged for something good, it would change how they function in the world. if there's simply a moment of their good, it would impact their function. Here is psychology in full effect. He says that when you control a man's thinking, you don't worry about his actions. You tell him to come here, to go there, you find his place and stay in it. The deep part about it is that you tell him to go to the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, if there is no back door, he will cut one out for his own benefit. His education, how he is trained, will make it necessary. He says that when you control a man's thinking, you don't worry about his action. He will go to the back door without being told. If there is no back door, he will assume he's supposed to have one, and he'll make a back door so he can be in his own place. Woodson, that's psychology, deep psychology. Control a person's thinking, you don't have to worry about their actions. If you implant in them this particular bug or this particular a seed or whatever you want to call it inside of their operating system, they will begin to operate as if you want them to operate. So they can be beaten, once again, back to our word negative, they can be beaten so long, they can be programmed that even when the beating is not taking place, the word will still operate on its own and people will begin to operate as if it is true. Is that making sense? Real stuff, real talk. Yeah. So Woodson further says about education, he says that the so-called modern education, with all its defects, however, does others so much more good than it does the Negro, because it has been worked out in conformity to the needs of those who have been enslaved and oppressed, who have oppressed weaker peoples. No systematic effort toward change has been possible for it taught the same economics, history, literature, and religion which have established the present codes of moral. The Negro's mind has been brought under the control of his oppressor. Deep point. That for being taught the same thing over and over and over again, the assumption becomes that the European reality is the only reality that even matters. So don't talk about Black History Month. What is that for? Why do we need all that? When is White History Month? Well, it exists. Every day is a White History Month moment.
They have the calendar.
Right? The calendar, it exists. I don't understand. Pull out a dollar bill. Pull out a 5. Pull out a 10. Anytime there's an exchange done to buy something of value, there is an acknowledgement of a European ancestor, and that it says that this ancestor has value and worth to get the things that I want in my life. It's a very simple process, very simple. We want to make it a big thing. It's not big, it's very simple. My daughter, 80-year-old daughter, 3 years ago said that, 2 years ago said, what would happen if those white girls would only see only black dolls on television? How they feel about themselves? I'm saying, how could this 6-year-old child come to that particular conclusion? It's like she started seeing something and said, what if every doll that popped up was black? What would happen? And I'm saying, I know she's my child, but still, that was just too deep for me to thinking like that. So the point is that he's saying that when you begin to change the thinking of a people, if you begin to change the historical context they find themselves in, they will operate differently. So being taught the same history, being taught that Greeks, that's it. I'm a part of a group organization, Omega Psi Phi. The point is that the highest order of organization? That's the highest one that we've been taught in the academy. But where did the Greeks learn theirs from? Right? All right. Yes. Anyway. Don't know, because why? We're not taught where they got it from. We're taught that that's it. I'm not going there. So, if you teach a Negro, Woodson says on self-hate, this is Woodson Black History Month, you teach a Negro that he has accomplished as much good as any race, he will aspire to equality and justice without regard to race. Such an effort would upset the program of the oppressor in Africa and America. Play up before the Negro then his crimes and shortcomings. Let him learn to admire the Hebrew, the Greek, the Latin, and the Teuton. Lead the Negro to detest the man of African blood, to hate himself. Self-hatred is created. Now, he didn't write this 2 days ago. He wrote this back in 1932. Play up, look, right here. How would you see? His crimes and shortcomings. Tonight on the news, right? 2000, what year we in? 12, right? So 1932, he's saying the same thing that is just today. Play up his crimes, he will begin to see himself as a criminal. That's the best I can do. Anyway, Woodson, self-hate, psychology. W.B. Du Bois says, and I'm breaking all of my slide rules for students. I say never put a whole bunch of words on slides, show pictures. I'm breaking all those rules because I want to get the message across. All right, is that making sense? So just allow me agency to break these rules for this moment. All right, so W.B. Du Bois says that after the Egyptian and the Indian and the Greek, the Roman, the Teuton, and I'm not even read it from the slide. This is some good quote right there. Right, this is good stuff. Right, so the Roman, Teuton, Mongolian, and Negro is a sort of seventh son. The idea, he goes there to say that he sees himself this two-ness. One never feels his two-ness. An American, a Negro, two warring souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideas, in one dark body whose dogged belong, keep us from going torn us asunder. W.B. Du Bois talks about the souls of black folks, saying that in this space, there's always this evaluating of self through the lens of someone else. The ritual, am I European enough to be able to navigate this space? That's a real challenge. Because when do I have a chance to be who I am, to function? And doing research with black men in the corporate America, they said that the toughest part of their job was not when they went to the job on Monday morning. The toughest part of their job when they would actually go to happy hour after work. Because now they have to, in that moment to breathe, they got to figure out how to interact with folks who they've been trying to get away from all day long.
That's so true.
Is that making sense? Yeah. I always got to figure out, well, because why? It's always explaining things. Got to over-explain, and they say, I get tired of explaining certain. I just want a simple moment where I can just say, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's it. I can, and that's it. It's done. Right. No conversation about, what does that mean? No, you got it. It's a done deal. It's a wrap. So they're saying that this notion of always having this two-ness, Du Bois says, is a challenge. And I ask the question, who's looking at this two-ness? Du Bois also says double consciousness about the history of the American Negro, the history of strife, of longing to attain self-conscious man and to merge his double self into a better, truer self. In this merging, he wishes neither the older self, and so forth, so he goes on saying this, and he's talking about this idea of self-development and trying to figure out, who am I in this space? How do I be? How do I function? A schizophrenic moment. That watching the Olympics, for example, knowing that one's in a space in a country that has not treated ancestors very well, but then having a cheer for American team. A moment. How do I sing the national anthem in a moment where it has not always been about freedom for folks like me? How do I celebrate 4th of July? It's always a moment. Always trying to figure out, what do I do with this? And Du Bois talked about this a long time ago. Always trying to reconcile something. Trying to figure out, how do I maneuver? How do I make things happen? But out of this particular struggle, I want you to gain this, comes social movement. Out of these challenges comes this intellect that suggests that, wait a minute, there's something more to me than simply being caught up in this miasmic confusion of identity. That within me is that there's something great and wonderful historically, and that is what's being attacked, and I will work to reconcile it. I will work to resurrect that by any means necessary. So the Black History Month then comes at the cost of this particular process. These folks seeing this struggle, this challenge, and saying, but what is it about this person, these folks, that seem to continue to move forward? Tell them about what they were before this, and then they will become something differently. The Civil Rights Movement, two key figures in the Civil Rights Movement have been Dr. King and Thurgood Marshall. The idea of the Civil Rights Movement lays the foundation for what now is being touted as social justice in this country. Last month, Dr. King's daughter was speaking at Valencia, and she was saying that we must understand that social justice did not start right now. It started, she said that my daddy was talking about social justice years ago. This idea of social justice, and what I want you to gain from this is that it is not simply even starting with Dr. King and Marshall. It starts with this idea of understanding humanity, human beingness that is profound, that it is an ancient African construct. And so it is not simply about the contemporary, but it's about the historical. How are people treated among people? We'll uncover that in a moment. Social Justice 2000 talks about the fair and proper administration of law conforming to the natural law that all persons, irrespective of ethnic origin, gender, possess, possessions, race, religion are to be treated equally and without prejudice. And obviously also it says go into civil rights. Social justice. The idea that civil rights even gave birth to it is out of this genius of Africanity. This is what I want you to gain about Black History Month. Not simply to understand about Lewis Latimer and inventions of Lewis Latimer. Very important stuff. Now to understand Garrett, Morgan, and all that, very significant stuff. To understand that the genius that brought forward those inventions and the genius that brought forth all of this comes from an ancient milieu of existence. Say it this way. Every female child in this room is born all the eggs that she'll ever carry in her entire life. Which means then that a female that gave birth to you, female, you were birthed by your grandmother at some level. Okay? Every female child born the eggs that she'll ever carry, which means then that the woman that gave birth to you gave birth to her own grandchildren at the same time. Say it that way. Is that making sense? Yes. So the material that makes you who you are is ancient and contemporary. It's always been here and it will be here if you continue to exist. So not only are you here in this moment, but you've always been here. Those eyes, that look, that nod, that whatever, that walk has been here. You move like somebody that came before you. You talk like somebody that came before you. Because your voice has always been here. The issue is that your genius has always been in effect and has always been making things happen. But if one begins to lose connectivity with that genius through their consciousness, then it can be guided in some very distorted manner. Folks mistakenly say that the sun is coming out. Folks, the sun ain't never went anywhere. How about that? Exactly. And I meant to say ain't. Never went anywhere. Two things need to happen. Our turn towards the sun has been shifted out, our proximity to it, or there's been a barrier between us and it via clouds. But it's not coming out. It is. Your genius is not coming out, it is. The word education comes from the Latin word educo, or educere, which means to bring out what is there. The idea that you have inborn genius is, Africa said, that is already there. And all we do is engage in the process of enlivening and sparking so that it can come out. Your bliss is always there, and it's always waiting to come out. So the point is, this movement is a good movement. It's all over California, it's happening all over the country. It's a good movement, wonderful movement. Understand your historical contribution to the movement that's impacting the entire world. Understand that when you take a stand, you impact the entire world. Understand that as people begin to gather in the social justice movement like this, that is a part of your ancestral genius that has informed the world that, wait a minute, everybody is human. Everybody has Ubuntu. Everybody is worth of being counted. When the movement in this country took off for civil rights, it also sparked the Soweto uprisings in South Africa. Hector Peterson was one of the first individuals who were killed in this uprising when these students said that we don't want to learn Afrikaans, we don't want to learn Bantu, we want to understand who we are as a people. They were been forced to learn in a language that was not one that was useful to them in their community. They said we don't want to learn like that. But they got the insight for this kind of movement from the African American struggle for civil rights. But the irony of it is they always had it because the word Ubuntu is from Zulu, South Africa. It's always there, just simply acknowledging it. You do understand, footnote, that you've heard of the Wizard of Oz, yes? Can I get a yes?
Yes.
Okay. You do understand that the Scarecrow was going to look for?
Brain? No. Yeah, brain.
Yes, and always had it. Right? The Lion was going to look for?
Courage.
Always had it. Right? Tin Man was going to look for?
Heart.
Always had it. Right? And what hit me so deeply was Dorothy was trying to get back home. Right? What was her dog name?
Toto.
What does Toto mean in Latin? Everything. Dorothy, that's the part blew my mind right there. Toto, Dorothy always had everything when she left in the first place. She had Toto. Toto in Latin means everything. The point is that people always have it, but not always able to connect to it because of conditions. So this idea that the Soweto uprising in '76, inspired by the movements of African Americans in this country, made things shift. Stop the apartheid in South Africa. And so we have this particular image right here of Hector Peterson, who's in this guy unidentified man's arm, boy's arm as students left, and they were leaving school trying to get him into safety. And that movement, he becomes the image of the movement in South Africa, was one that was inspired by the genius of African Americans saying, let's make things happen. But in 2010, almost the same identical look of movement for social justice in Palestine. Same thing. Let's do it again so you can catch that. So that's in 76. It's 2010. 76, 2010. You get it? 76, 2010. Where did it all start? The genius is to say that everybody counts in the world. In Okinawa, in 1970, the Okinawans had been oppressed for years by the Japanese. Even to this day, they are oppressed for the way they talk. They talk a type of Ebonics. How about that? So when they go to Japan, they are ostracized. Their music is very slow and methodical. How about it sounds like blues? How about that? Very different music. I noticed because in California I played with an Okinawan. This information comes from Dr. Wesley Winton, and he told me about what happened. I had no idea. This is why coming and going is very good. This is how a bird builds its nest. According to Ashanti Proverbs, coming and going is how a bird builds its nest. Coming and going is how you build your nest. That in going to teach there, I met Dr. Winton, and he told me about their movement in South Africa, in Okinawa, against the oppressive government of Japan, was inspired by African American soldiers who had been engaged in the process of fighting for civil rights in this country. And the Okinawans then were able to gain their freedom at some level from the Japanese government. Deep stuff, heavy, and he showed me pictures of soldiers who, and the Okinawans blew up a whole lot of American stuff on American government land in Okinawa. But they would not mess with stuff that belonged to African Americans. They recognized that they too were being oppressed in their country. Deep conversation. And the pictures of soldiers and Okinawans in conversation about strategies to liberate yourself from your oppressor. The genius about understanding humanity was there. In Tiananmen Square, the students here say that they got the idea to stand up from not only the South African anti-apartheid movement, but also the civil rights movement in America. Same thing. Students rose up and they began to talk about economic reform. It should be economic. You shouldn't be on there. I apologize for that. So they were protesting, and they were inspired by. They were inspired by the movements of African Americans that said that we will be counted as human, which once again is African genius about humanity. And the irony of it is that even though the students protested, more civilians died in this than did the students, because some of them got caught at the wrong time. Others actually understood the students' cry and stood with the students. Occupy movement. Similar idea. The idea that what? That we're the 99% and we won't be silent anymore. Occupy uses the same notion of what it means to be human. Yeah. Started, of course, we talked about it in 2011, and protested what? Economic inequality. It was the same message that Dr. King talked about towards the end of his life. It was about economic equality in this country. It was that message, and that's why Dr. King's daughter suggests that they continually play the I Have a Dream and leave out the last 5 years of his life, because he was talking about economic deprivation and challenging poor people's movement, the idea of challenging the economic structure of a country. So I Have a Dream came 5 years before he terminated. His message it shifted to dealing with how do we change the economics of a country that impacts the entire world. Why do you think this is, when you don't understand Ubuntu, you end up with this idea of a housing market falling down. Look, logic. Banking. It's all about me. I'm going to sell you a house, and I'm going to give you a loan that's exorbitant, that balloons on you. You're not going to be able to pay. You're going to turn the house back over to me. I'm going to then get the house and sell it at a higher price. Makes sense. That's business. That's making money. I'm going to flip this house. Is that what we were told? Flip the house? Yeah. All right? So what happens when 7, 8 of those houses in one place at one time. Now you have a problem. That's because they didn't understand what? Ubuntu. That if you do this too many times, it's not going to be able to be repeated. You can't repeat it. Because if you get several folks balloon noting at one time, there are a lot of houses floating. And a lot of houses floating, then the economy is going to be disrupted. The economy, nobody's going to buy. Nobody's going to buy. Everything is going to fall under. What happened? It fell under. But when you understand Ubuntu, you understand a process of life. That there's a process that says that I must respect you. You got to respect the same thing. It goes on over and over again. What's happening with pigs? Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain, trying to restructure economy based on the same thing, that whatever happened in one place impacts somebody in another space. Ubuntu. So you can't have a disrupted American economy without disrupting any of the global economy. So now, if China makes this particular money on export, and everybody in this room guaranteed have at least 10 things in their possession right now made in China, guaranteed. I don't know what you have, but I know that you got these 10 things right now. You just reach down and start looking, 10 things. You're right, China. If China makes its money on exporting, economy can't buy from them. What do they export? Nothing. Everything, Ubuntu says everything is connected. But if you into me and mine and I and getting, you lose the entire process. Santa Claus can see you when you sleep. Knows when you're awake. Knows you've been bad or good, be good for goodness sake, right?
Yes.
Right? So now you have Santa Claus, a European image. That's not my point, though. My point is my point here is that the child that is worth it most on Christmas Day is the one that has the most toys or the most valuable toys. So what did you get this year? I got this. Oh, you must have been good. What did you get? I got this. Oh, you must have been really good. So your value is predicated on your material acquisition. It is a value system that is infused within a culture in a very subtle manner. So it is about I. What did I get? Even today, about Love Day, right? What did I get? But nobody exists because you can't even love without somebody else being around you, right? That's a whole nother piece, right? Yeah. You can't love without someone else being there. It doesn't exist. The love comes from a give and take process, a reciprocity. But it comes about what I. And then some people are going to fall out with somebody tonight, because what they didn't get today. Right? What you didn't get today, that's a whole other thing. But Ubuntu says that we all tied together. When I told you that this was an ancient construct, I want to kind of slide into this phase, and then I want to go into open discussion. That's the best part of all presentations to me, is open discussion. I want to tell you that this notion of humanity being tied together goes thousands of years back. One particular person is Akhenaten, who was also known as Amenhotep, in the 18th dynasty of Kemet or Egypt. And one of the things that he did is that he attempted to capture the colonies or the territories that had been taken over by the oppressors by using the idea of monotheism or a one God concept. So you have the birth at some level of what we call Christianity, Judaism, and Islam coming out of ancient Egypt or Kemet, this notion that there's a one God concept, a unifying force, not quite like Constantine utilized Catholicism, which is a different take on it. Because Constantine was using Catholicism as universal for control, but he got the idea from Ignatius, and Ignatius was talking about the idea that, as Akhenaten, that the God concept, the God force hits us all. So this idea of monotheism comes out of an ancient African genius. It was a social justice movement. It was about understanding the unifying force of all things, and that through this unifying force, one is empowered to live life better. I'm not going to go into the cosmology and ontology and epistemology of Kemet, but I want you to get the concept, the idea that Akhenaten thousands of years ago talked about the same thing that's happening today. How to unify systems, how to unify two parties, how to unify an economy. Same ideas. And guess what? Akhenaten was beaten up, kicked down, pushed aside, punched, hit, told he was lying. Y'all don't get that. All right, so
Nope.
yeah, somebody got it. So the idea is that he was pushed aside because they said that these ideas don't belong here. But eventually they caught on. Now that a civilization requires its oldest civilization in the entire world. The skin pigment, those tests done by Dr. Sheikh Anta shows that, and what he did was able to get some skin from mummies from sarcophagi out of France, and he was able to take University of Sorbonne, take some of the skin, do a melanin dosage test on these, and he count the melanin sites that which gives skin pigment, and prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that those who were in the coffins were not pale Elizabeth Taylor looking folks, but they were actually dark-skinned, highly melanated African folks. And that the civilizations that started, once again, monotheism, that started the notion of understanding the ebb and flow of the blood through the bloodstream, understanding all that genius, understanding the idea of time. Folks talk about CPT, right? Color people's time, right? The notion of the calendar in Kemet was divided into 36 weeks, 10 days each. Ancient concept. 36 times 10 is what? Come on, man. 36. How many degrees in a circle? So the idea of 360 in a circle was ancient African notion. All time then is African time. That's all I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because the idea of the calendar, you say, well, what happened to the other 5 days? Those were 5 holy days of worship. Where the idea of holidays come from. They said that those are 4 1/4 days, that there is holy days of stillness, where we can give acknowledgement to a higher being. What do we call them today? Holidays. Where's holidays come from? The word what? Holy. Ancient Kemetic concept. Every time you celebrate a so-called holiday, you acknowledge an ancient Kemetic ideas, but have no idea, because why? The belief is that everything that's great and wonderful came out of where? Greece and Rome.
Yep.
Hello. What did Woodson say? That if you teach a person the same thing, they'll believe that it belongs to somebody else and not themselves. Even the idea of education. How about that? Anyway, Herodotus, the Greek historian, stated that the Nile civilization were the earliest and most advanced in the world. Why is that important to know? Because Herodotus is credited with being the Greek historian. And he says that these folk are older than we are. So if you don't believe what Dr. Washington is saying, and you want to deal with the Greeks and what they say, here's the Greek. Herodotus, some people don't believe it unless somebody else says it, right? Right? So Herodotus said what? They were old. They were already here. And the evidence of the language, social organization, philosophy, and technology was already in effect. What am I talking about? Social justice, the idea of humanity. The word, I'm not going to deal with the name of that. Oh, well, you might want to know this Black History Month. Okay, so, earliest names of Africa, Alkebulan. Later, the Romans named it Africa, but Africa was the Greeks. And then even this word, Ethiops, means burnt face by the Greeks. So they even tell you what the folks look like when they got to them. Ethiops means burnt face, Ethiopia, burnt people, like they've been burnt by the sun. Okay. So what was facing Akhenaten was this division, this upper and lower Kemet discussion that had happened years before. People had divided this Democratic and Republican, how about that, system. And so he was trying to join those systems together. And so he had to find a way to join them together. And so he began to infuse the idea that we all tied together. Get some kingdom ideas, so dynasties. And where did he fit into the process? From the 25th century dynasty were 4 periods: Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom, and Late Kingdom. Through these various kingdoms, you see what has happened in ancient Kemet, giving you the foundation, pyramid, literary, temple, and return to the traditional age. The idea here I want you to gain from this is that there is a philosophical underpinning of human beings that's going through every activity, through every pyramid, through every text that is written, through every particular sacred temple, and through the tradition. It is all there. The same idea is running through all of those things. For 1,000 years, the same idea has been running and has not stopped. The dynasty period, 14 black dynasties, 15 through 17, were ruled by the Hyksos, What dynasty did Akhenaten take over?
The new dynasty.
What dynasty did he take over? What number?
Number 3.
18th dynasty, very much. So 15th through 17th were ruled by Asian Hyksos. It was the 18th dynasty when black rule took back over again. You see here at this point is when you end up with another era, which he's bringing back humanity. So how does this work? Well, let's just suggest that this space was occupied by those who we call Indians and Native Americans. What if tomorrow they became president? It'd be like that experience right here. It'd be all of a sudden they'd be back in position of power all over again. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So the space was taken over by invaders, and these invaders had disrupted it. And so you have Akhenaten saying, wait a minute, everybody's human. And so here is the notion of humanity. How do we join things back together again? And so you have more dynasties. Asian rule took over again, 25th Greek dynasty, and then Rome 33rd, and then in 29th tried to pull things together again, couldn't get it together again, it fell apart. But out of that system, you get a sacred writing. Some want to call it hieroglyphs. The hieroglyphs were called Medo-Neter, which means writing of the gods. They say that everything you write is divine. That if you don't have these things forming, you're not sitting up and taking notes today. The idea of taking notes, people say, well, they were verbal. They were oral tradition. They were written too. Where did writing come from? And all of these symbols have deep and profound meaning. I can't go into what they all mean, but they all have deep and profound meaning. And they actually, if you look at them long enough, I can show it to you, and you can begin to see how why we form the aura. You got that? The way we do, not aura. Aura. When you're important in the aura. Or anyway, so how we form the letters S? Why is it formed in that particular way? It comes out of this idea of the snail. All this stuff, even in the black church, what do you do when you're leaving while the pastor or the minister is preaching? The acknowledgement of what? Right, hold with your head down. The idea of what? This is ancient African. What do you do at the close of the church in general when you get the benediction? Yes. What happens with benediction? What do you do? How do you stand?
Head down. Head up.
Right?
Yeah.
This was a symbol of soul in ancient Kemet. One of these symbols right here is Ka. Is soul. Right? All of these ideas have been replicated about humanity, and you can see them in these writings. You see the Coptic script, Medo-Neter, the first notion of writing, and the Greeks add vowels to it. The Copts were Kibbutz who converted to foreign religion in order to survive, and so you have the Coptic language. They have various texts that show all of this information about humanity and what to do throughout life. Coffin text, temple text, papyrus. All this stuff is happening. The Rosetta Stone, not the company that they, but the old stone, shows this classic Medo-Neter, a pictorial script, and how it began to move into cursive, demonic, and then Coptic script, which goes into what we call writing today. Ancient form of text. So every time you were writing a note, it is not a European reality. It's not the Phoenicians. They talk about writing phonetics. It is based on ancient African notion of how to communicate in a form that is sacred and divine. Because they said that writing is divine speech, divine writing of the gods. There's Medo-Nefer, which is divine speech. Every time you utter a word, it's divine speech. Yeah, anyway. The Memphite theology, you see what happens with the Ta and Amun and Septepi in the first occasion. And in that story, you have the primeval waters of Nun giving birth to law of life, cosmology. And that there are divisions of that happens over and over again. One of those divisions is Nut and Geb. Idea of Nut and Geb, Nut being female, Geb being male, Nut being the sky, Geb being the earth, and that somehow Geb impregnates Nut with eternal life. I'll say it the other way around. Nut contains all life, eternal life, and Geb enters into it. How you choose to tell the story is an ancient story about how life is perfect, is advanced, is procreated. The point I want you to gain from this is that this is about profound humanity. Now we can talk about it to the windows, to the walls. Right? Had to explain to my daughter what did skeet mean. Right? And here she is. She was 12. Well, Daddy, what does that mean? It's like, okay. And then I started explaining. She said, Dad, I don't want to hear all that. Well, here's a song. But it comes out of this ancient story about understanding that life is eternal, not about making it a terrible thing. This is about understanding that eternity is an open space. That woman is the essence of all life, eternal. And that Geb has a responsibility to her, a relationship. And they balance one another. Ubuntu, humanity. Now it's all about, anyway, I'm not going to go over. So, Ma'at and Tahuti, masculine, feminine. Ma'at being female, symbolizing truth, justice, righteousness, prosperity, harmony, balance, and order. Tahuti being a male counterpart, the ibis bird, able to wade through the murky waters. Together, they create this thing called life. And that one would have to say the 42 negative confessions, humanity all over again. I have not defrauded, I have not stolen, I have not taken from anybody. I've done things great and wonderful. If you could not weigh your soul against the balance of the feather of Ma'at, you would go to a place that was now called like hell. That story is ancient. As a matter of fact, the stories of the New Testament of Christianity actually are older than the Old Testament. That's a whole other piece. So because a lot of the stories foundationally come out of ancient Kemet, and you see that foundational text. That is the idea of humanity. And Ma'at, being a female, is the origin of what is now considered to be the winged goddess. So you have Ma'at here, winged goddess, which is now what America calls what? The scales of justice. Ancient Kemetic concept of Ma'at. Truth. That Imhotep, an ancient, a profound genius, that if you look at the movies today, they depict Imhotep as an evil person. Dark guy.
Dark side.
My daughter's gonna have the thing.
The dark side.
Anyway, so we have them thinking of the dark side, multi-genius, creating things, creating high ideals out of things great and wonderful. Tahuti, ibis bird, Tahuti is symbolized here. And so you have Tahuti and Ma'at married together. You have other civilizations out of Ghana that came after that. I mean, out of Africa that came after that. I'm just running through some things to help you understand that it's a process. All of these things were happening, and through all of these things is this notion of Ubuntu, human beings. The Ghana Empire, iron, gold, copper. Ghana controls salt trade military force. Dark Ages happen, and then there's a reclaim of something. Mali comes along, and there's things happening where there's trade going on. The global economy is alive and well. So we have Kemet, the global economy. We have Ghana, the global economy. Mali, the global economy. One of the first universities ever built, University of Sankore in Timbuktu. Folks say, what? I'm knocking back to what? Timbuktu. Timbuktu was a place of high learning, knowledge. High place. How can that become somehow some place to be bastardized? Timbuktu. All right, take them to Timbuktu. That's where we got the modern age of education started. How about that one? Have you heard of University of Sankore? Changed the whole conversation. So Timbuktu was not a bad place. It's where it was happening. It's what's up. How about that? Songhai. And what was happening in the global economy there, and how people began to try to gain understanding. Goa, Sankore, and Jenny universities. So education in the African context is not new. Folks say, well, Black History Month comes along, and before this happened, blacks weren't learning. No, before the imposition of alien forces that started to take away humanity. Now, you got to put it in context. Before there was a period, there was a break. As there was a break in history in the dynasties in Kemet, there's been a break, and so now there's a reclamation process. And where are you in that? You are part of the reclamation process. You're part of the restorative process of dynasties that have been broken up for years. That's what I want you to gain from this. That your Ubuntu is impacting the world. John Abiti says that I am because we are, therefore I am. Ancient African concept. When I was in South Africa researching, I learned Ubuntu, and Gabantu. A person is a person because we are people. The idea that everybody is tied together. And that everything is always as it should be. That we are here living, that we're also the dead and those yet to be born. You go to a family reunion, somebody says you look just like, right? And who do you look like? Which means then that you're not only here, but you've always been here, and then your grandfather will come back again. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Heavy stuff. Among the Zulu, the concept of Ubuntu says this. When we describe people as having Ubuntu, we mean that they have a conscience, a verb, not to disappoint their creator and those who left them the heritage of nature, of the beauty of the soil, should be of the sky. Ubuntu alludes to honesty, integrity, caring, responsibility, accountability, empathy. It means that we are intricately human together. Ubuntu is a notion that we can see that has been a part of humanity since, and it is still a part of humanity today. Ubuntu suggests that life has the capacity to attract to itself what it needs to sustain itself. It draws energy to itself to be able to elevate itself. You think about a seed that can lie dormant, as my grandmother used to have a watermelon seed in the window that never could grow until we placed it in the soil. And that seed had the capacity to draw nutrients from the earth and to pull down energy from the sun and to take the moisture from the rain and then bring forth life. That is Ubuntu. That human beings have the capacity to draw to them the things that they need to elevate and to grow. And that this growth is the thing that is essential to human existence. The idea that unity is that all sense of connected, that everything you do is tied to everything else that will be done. And that spirit explains all things in the world. And that these moments here are moments that we can see that Ubuntu was not even in operation, that something was erroneous in this moment. That this is not about profound human being, this is about understanding that one is object and can be somehow nullified. The idea that people will sit around and gather and celebrate the death and demise of someone else. These are moments of trauma. But out of these moments comes a recognition or a reclamation of the idea of community and wholeness. And so this experience of community, the share a particular experience of a group of people, seems to inform them of the energy to move forward with a sense of purpose. It informed Dr. Woodson, it informed Dr. Du Bois, it informed Mary McLeod Bethune, it informs you in this space right now to do something great and wonderful. And so in closing, I look at Dr. Bell's work on the 7 principles of risk and resiliency. And he says that 1, we must reweave the social fabric and recreate a sense of community. The idea that I want to get across here today is that this notion of understanding humanity and how it functions and how things can possibly be is predicated on you recognizing the notion of Ubuntu today, that it is yours, it has been a part of your ancestral legacy, and you have to bring something forward. Provide models, tools, skills, and techniques to facilitate the implementation of the concept or program that comes from your genius. One of the reasons that I submit that even President Barack Obama is receiving some flack, he may even understand where it's coming from, is because he's saying this idea of unification, of crossing party lines, of trying to bring things together in a context with those who want to keep things disrupted. And so you must bring forward programs, create situations, programs, relationships that foster a sense of connection, attachment, belonging to a larger group, and a common goal. Even though there's emphasis to force people to want to separate, Dr. Bell says we must find ways to always connect and help one another get through the process. And so if you get your paper done, you get yours done, and together we have our paper done. Does that make sense? We must foster that idea, provide opportunities to learn social and emotional skills. What is it that needs to happen? As long as we operate in a fragmented sense, we always will be torn down. So as long as we have those N words and B words and garden tools, always be fragmented. But when there is this idea of social and emotional skills, that I belong to you, the idea of belonging, or what happened to me in studying in South Africa, we were looking at gangs and how gangs develop. And so what was really heavy is that they said that, yes, gangs do seem to exist in South Africa, but they exist among the colors, more so than the Zulu, the Xhosa, the Swana, and other in the Bella. Sister says, well, who are the colors? The colors are a combination of the Afrikaners and the traditional African population. And so the colored groups are the colored are what we would call mulattoes in this country. They are not African, they don't want to be African, and they can't be accepted among the Afrikaans, so they exist in this no space. So they create a reality. Well, I thought about us in America. We don't want to be tied to ancestral legacy, and we can't be accepted by the dominant group, so we exist in this space, so we create this idea of family. But if we were able to provide our youth, provide ourselves with a sense of who we are, it changes how we function, who we can become. Is that making sense? And so that is our obligation, even though there were some who will resist it because they had been conditioned to believe that it's not true.
Yep.
That you have to continue to move forward with it, because in moving forward, creating social and emotional skills will impact change for perpetuity. Provide opportunities to increase self-esteem. That is, you must engage in a learning process to know something. You can't go in and talk about how to be a woman, how to be a man, and you don't have any historical information to share with somebody. What do you bring that's different to the table that changes thought? One of the things that I've seen that's happened around prisons in this country is that I've seen that men who go to prison and women who go to prison, when they go there, they learn something that they never got on the outside. They begin to learn something about their humanity that they never had received. And that's the thing that has to be delivered by you. But you can't expect somebody else to give it to you. You got to go get it. You got to go dig for it. How do you think Dr. Woodson found the information? Nobody walked up and gave him a book and said, Woodson, look at this. He had to go dig for it and make connections. Sheikh Anta Diop had to dig for it and make connections. People have had to go down and find it. And they wanted to bring it back up and say, now let me show you who you really are. Let me give you an image of who you really are. And after doing that, it changed folks' esteem. Bell says, provide an adult protective shield. That is that there is an obligation for those who are older. I need you all to stand firm, because I have a 13-year-old and 8-year-old coming behind you. And if you weak and fragmented, then they jacked up forever. I'm going to do what I have to do, but there's a time that you will probably be here and I won't be here. Is that making sense?
Yes.
So you got to be able to stand for them, as somebody stood for you, and somebody will stand for yours. Is that making sense?
Yes. Right.
So the idea is that there has to be an adult shield, and to minimize trauma. And somehow we want to keep procreating trauma of trauma. We keep procreating trauma through the words that we use, through the thoughts that we think, through the actions that we engage in. And so we have to stop having this trauma moment and know that we are born with profound power. In closing, this story I will tell you and then I'm done. There was this particular king who would give his son every year everything that his son wanted for his birthday. So his son said, I would love to have a statue of myself. And the father says, well, son, you can have anything, so don't just settle for an old statue. Just think of something and I'll grant it for you, because I am the king. And so he gave his son a week. He came back again. His son thought about it and says, I would love to have a statue of myself. And his son and the father says, well, you're my son. I want to give you another week. Think about this, because you can have anything besides a statue. Think of something good. Great, wonderful. The son thought about it for an entire week again. He asked his father, I would love to have a statue of myself. He says, well, son, we never told you this, but you look different. You have a hump on your back. You were deformed. You were distorted. And so we don't want you to see what you look like. He says, well, if it makes you feel better, build a statue of what I would look like without the hump and place it in the garden. The father thought it was a very odd request, but he did it, because he was a son and he loved his son. Every day, the son would go out and look up at the statue. On days when it was raining, he would go look up at the statue. On days when he missed his father, he would go look at the statue. On days when he wanted some peace, he would go look at the statue. One day his father came home and saw him watching the statue. He said, son, you look different. What happened? He says, well, every day I came and I looked at the statue. He says, but son, the hump in your back is gone. He says, all you ever had to do was show me an image of what I could become. I saw it and I became it. Remember that you all are image makers, making a new image for the next generation. Thank you.
I know somebody might be pressed for time, or give the classes to go to. Maybe we can call upon Dr. Washington to stay with us a little longer. I know you have questions. I know you think that I set this up at 10. Great minds think alike. There's some great minds in this class. Anybody have any questions that they would like to?
You mentioned the Occupy movement. Do you go through anything about the Arab Spring that actually pushed that forward, the Occupy movement?
Say more about the Arab Spring, and I'll show you their connection. Say more about the Arab Spring. Say more about that.
Well, the Arab Spring kind of it goes through and the Egyptians they had similar stuff going on in Egypt. In Egypt they had Mubarak, who was in power, and he was oppressing the people. He had something called the emergency law, where he would tell people, you got to stay indoors, you can't come outside, and put a curfew up, and anybody caught outside would be shot. So it was something of a similar situation, but only this is more on a social basis. But with the Arab Spring, it's a little bit more real, realist perspective.
The idea that in Egypt, the recent discussion is not, once again, a new discussion, and that movement, and that was one of the movements I was going to talk about as well, but time went along. But that movement is informed by this genius of humanity. So we can reduce it down to economics, because this global structure has every human being is a dollar sign at some level. So the economy, I won't go there, right? But anyway, the economic structure then says that if we can gain more economic power, then we will have more meaning. But the reality is not about money, economic power. It's about having meaning as a human being. Can you return my humanity back to me? If you can't, then I'm going to find a way to take it. And it happened there. It happened also in I'm saying Tripoli. It happened, and it's happening all over that particular continent, because people are saying humanity, but also in Greece, it's saying the same thing.
Greece is now on strike right now.
Right, same thing. But it's about the Ubuntu concept, and people are missing out on that one. Pigs missing out. Well, that's Portugal, Italy, Greece. That's Spain. That's something really to be attuned to. They're saying the same thing. I am human. When you have the money not worth of anything, but that's saying that I'm not worth of anything. So how do I get my humanity back? And that's African genius, how it manifests. And I'm not saying that there's only African people thinking like that. My point is this. African genius, the Ubuntu is not there. When a person can stand before you and suggest, I am not concerned about poor people. They have a safety net. That's not Ubuntu. You can see the worldview manifest. That's not difficult to understand. Whereas on that same day, President Barack Obama was doing a prayer breakfast. I watched him give his speech about we and us, and about how we work together. The least of these, the same rhetoric of Ubuntu. That I'm concerned about. How are you not going to be concerned about the ones that you call poor when you don't have any wealth without those that have to do the grunt work for you? That's right. That's a myth. That's not understanding the system. That's where the disruption comes from. So you have we, us tied together, and it's all about me and mine. For a moment, me and mine, I will win out. But see, we're in a society that sells us iPod, iPad, I this, I that, right? iPhone, right? So it's I. Right? So we're in this space, I everything. But not understanding the idea of the we game is going out and it's fading fast. Even we has two I's in it. Won't even spell it right? We, I, W-I, right? We. So anyway, the point is that when you hear that kind of rhetoric, that's how you can identify worldview. The idea of self, I'm not concerned about those people, and the one that says, how are we going to work this thing out together? It's real, but some say, well, that's African worldview doesn't really exist. Yes, it does. I'm going to show you where, I'll show it to you right here. I'll show it to you in 2012. So that movement, yes, sir.
Still have another question. Have you ever heard anything about the Patriot Act? The Patriot Act. My friend Diego, he's of Colombian descent, and the TSA is just on him, like mad crazy, because he's of Hispanic descent. And when he goes to the TSA, man, it's just like every single time he goes to the airport, they gotta search him upside down. They gotta search everything. So it's just like, when you talk about Ubuntu, like I am human, all these laws now, they have the NDAA Act that just passed a couple days ago. It's like what's going on? I mean, the Patriot Act on top of the Patriot Act, that's just ridiculous. I mean, now they can indefinitely like detain any American citizen without any trial. So it's just the same thing with my liberty movement.
Yes. So nobody's human, right?
So exactly, nobody's human.
I got you. All right, this is real quick. The circus. You've seen the circus where they have 3 rings, 5 rings of activity. So we focus on those rings, and then they turn the lights off, and the clowns come out. And while the clowns are out, they're setting the stages up for more activity. But while we focus on the clown, we're missing out in the dark, the stage. And so events like the Patriot Act shields us from seeing something bigger. What it is, I don't know. But by the time the lights come back on, it's like, boom, there it is. And what I mean by that, the Patriot Act and the dehumanization of people not having rights. God, you said it. The Patriot Act, the humanization of people not having rights. I was once with bid with this too. It's going to be hot. Is one of those moments where folks lose their identity, but it's something else bigger in operation beyond simply the Patriot Act. And if we miss that, then we get caught in the saying that our rights have been taken. But your rights are already taken because anything you do with this, people know what you've done. Right. People can track you anywhere you go. So it's not like we talk about chips and all kind of stuff. It's right here, right? So your cell phone, your computer carries this identity. So that kind of right has left. But the right to be human, the essence, can never be taken by these things. And that's the choice that we make every day. Is that making sense? The choice of how we treat one another, how we treat ourselves. When is the last time you looked in the mirror and said, I love what I see?
Yesterday.
When you look in the mirror and, yeah, I'm sure you would. Right? So, you look in the mirror and you think about all those that came before you. Think about why you stand today. That's an act of active strength that can never be disrupted. Nobody can ever take that. That's the fight that is real. This other stuff will come and go. There's like clowns in a circus. But the real stage is you look into the mirror and loving yourself and then saying, today I'm going to move out with power because somebody moved before me with power. And I will stand against the powers of evil. And because the evil is not necessarily outside of me, the evil is within me. If you don't believe yourself to have power, then you have no real strength. That's the real enemy. Does that make sense? Yes. Challenge that and watch what happens. So, yeah. Cool. Yes.
Just real fast. You mentioned throughout this whole thing, you kind of mentioned the connection to our African roots and the importance of that. And prior to hearing you speak, honestly, I've been a person that has not shunned it away, but not really saw the significance of it because I always say, I don't understand it. You put me in Africa, I'll be lost. If you take me over there, I would be completely confused. So I'm an African, but American is more so of who I am. What type of suggestions or ways do you think we can, as a people or as me as a person, can make that connection to the younger generation? Because if I talk to someone that's just 5 years younger than me, the whole idea of anything of Africa is just like, oh, I can go over there and take some clothes and some shoes, but not like understand my roots and the importance of it.
Has your thought changed a little bit today?
Yeah, it's tremendously.
How did it change?
Tremendously. It changed from the understanding of when you mentioned I can function in the professional world perfectly, but my friends and I always talk about the professional and then the me. And when it's time to go out to happy hour, it's always like, wait a minute, I don't know what to do because I don't want to be too me and you like, oh, well, that's not the Randall we know.
Right.
But I also don't want to be so far away from you that when you feel like, okay, well, I can't connect with this guy. We don't know Randall. So I'm always like in that fine line, like I don't really know. And even in myself, like I'm a first generation college student, so a lot of times as a graduate going on for graduate work, a lot of things come to me, I feel like, in pieces, because I don't have an image, a person to follow. I don't have a dedicated mentor that says, this is what I've been through, this is what you can aspire to be. So for much of my life, it's been looking at celebrities and entertainers and saying, this is what they do, so okay, I can go here. And then on Tuesday, oh, this person did that, so I can go here. Then by Friday, oh, well, I'm on a whole nother path because I saw this new person. So
The reason I ask the question is how the light turn on, because that is how the light gets turned on.
Yeah.
Whatever worked for you today, it will continue to work. And I too was a person that used to draw anything African. I remember this guy in college talked about African stuff and Marcus Garvey movie. I was like, man, get out of here with all that stuff. So I shut him down. I don't want to hear all that black stuff, right? That black stuff will get your head around. All you got to do is go get paid.
Yeah.
But it was one day that one person turned it on and say, wait a minute, do you know really how awesome you are? That made me stop and look at movies. Then it's been years of putting pieces back together again.
Yeah.
The part I can work with. I'm not doing it all. I'm doing the part I can with human function and psychology. And so that's the part I work with. Am I embraced often? No, I'm not. Have I been asked not to take certain jobs because my ideas are too black? Yes, I have. With a PhD, hey, that's good, but you're not a good fit here. Right. We don't think that you like it here. Did I say I didn't like it here? But you're not a good fit. Right? We don't think that you'd be happy. But the point is, even among my own family members, ostracized. Well, that black stuff, but what you need to really do is think about these things. And it's been hurt and pain. It's not like it's just been a glorious ride.
Yeah.
But through all of that comes something, self-awareness. Through all of that comes something greater about myself, and that's what I go to deliver. And the best class I ever taught in my entire life was at the Nebraska State Penitentiary, where these brothers asked me to come in and talk about black psychology, and I had all the arrogance in the world. I'm in the free world, I'm gonna come in there, I'm gonna slap it on them because they've been locked up.
Yes.
And I had to be in that space for 3 hours with them. And they said, well, do you want to talk or do you want to, or can we talk for the first hour? I said, well, I grew up in the South, so I knew to let them go first. Within the first 30 minutes, everything I wanted to talk about had been blown out. Everything was just gone. It was like everything that I thought I was going to bring a drop on, they just threw it out there. And it was so well organized. When I said the best and the worst because they were incarcerated, but the best was the brothers were on point. And they were on point, and they brought out some things that I thought about. As a result, I had to go to the next level. So they raised me to the next level. So I don't know what I said for that next hour, but it was something that they said that they recorded, and for a year after, they played it for every new inmate that came through the doors, through the gates. But the point I'm making is that it is understanding that it's a process. It's not a destination, because it's been shattered over the years. And then getting back into who you are, something that you have to take initiative for. That is, you connect with somebody. I connected with Naeem Akbar and Dr. Wade Nobles and other folks, and I just went to go, I hit them up. Who, what? Right here, you have folks right here that can, if you stop to get a story from them, you'll get a story that you can begin to connect with, because nobody has all the truth. Is that making sense? So you get a piece over here, you get a piece over here, and then your piece will come together. So when you're in that corporate system, you can still be firm. Know who you are. Like that's what Lion King says, know who you are. So you stand there knowing who you are.
And on top of that, I would say, just look at the documentary on Muhammad Ali in Zaire. Okay, not the film, but
the documentary. Yeah, thank you. I meant that. Yes.
Okay.
So yes, I forgot about that.
And you see that connection.
I went to Barbados last week, and I saw people blowing horns and speaking like it did in Louisiana. So that's how I know I'm connected. That's Ubuntu. I was in South Africa, same thing. They say Sawubona, Yebu Sawubona. They say Sawubona to me. I say, oh, I'm fine. How you doing? They asked me, how do you know what they were saying? I said, because I grew up in the South. So Sawubona sound like, how you doing? Yeah. Right? Fine, and you. Sawubona was the same rhythm and flow. So I said, fine, and you. That's how we know we connected. Right? Zaire, when Muhammad Ali made the connection. Richard Pryor made a connection. James Brown made the connection. They started connecting with stuff. Said, wait a minute. I've been hoodwinked. I've been bamboozled. Been run amok. But it's a process. It's a process. But you gotta take the process on. Because what the oppressor will give you is about your oppression. Last quote from Dr. Woodson, he says that if the Negro in the ghetto looks to the hand that pushes it in the ghetto to get out of the ghetto, the Negro will never get out of the ghetto.
Yeah, right.
If you look to the crack dealer to take you to rehab, you won't ever get to rehab. If you look to the pimp to carry you as a prostitute to get straightened out, the pimp won't ever take you to get straightened out. Right? You gotta straighten yourself out, and support is all around. And then you gotta share it. I found out that I couldn't go back into the community talking about, well, you know, look at me, I'm so successful, you can be successful too. But I had a thing different. I had the same old stuff. This is how you dress, this is how you walk, and what? And what, fool? What that's gonna do? Huh? And what? So, that ain't, but when I came in with something else, bam, about African history, about something different. Really? Yes. Something to think about. But we're going with the same old program. But you got to bring something else to the table. We all do. Go and clap. You want me to stop? I'll stop. Sit down, be quiet. I gotta go.